Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 392, and today's guest is Damien Lewke, founder and CEO of Nebulock. Damien is purpose-built for this company, which is a statement he's heard from one of his investors, that being Will Lehman. When you hear about Damien's background story, it's kind of hard to argue. Damien's path to where he is today has been very thoughtful, methodical, and intentional. It's a path that has allowed him to learn and understand as much as possible about cybersecurity. In addition, he has worn several different hats throughout his career. I'm talking solutions architecture, product marketing, product management, and other roles that have all put him in a strong position to lead a venture-backed startup. Nebulock is an autonomous threat hunting platform designed from scratch for behavior-based detection. By connecting directly to identity, endpoint, and cloud telemetry, Nebulock continuously hunts threats, surfaces hidden anomalies, and automatically increases your detection coverage. The company announced $8.5 million in funding, including their seed round, led by Bain Capital Ventures, alongside Decibel VC, Zetta Venture Partners, In-Q-Tel, and several angel investors. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like a conversation about being a solo founder, Damien's background story, including his experience playing professional soccer in Germany, how he relates athletics to building startups, and why professional soccer player Mario Götze is on the cap table. Getting his career started in systems engineering and cyber operations, then his move into the solution side of things at companies like CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, and Arctic Wolf. The idea of how Nebulock came to fruition, which he recognized as a problem over a decade ago, yet it still hasn't been solved. An explanation of what threat hunting is, the current state of Nebulock, its platform, and what's ahead, Damien's 3 biggest lessons learned since starting a company, and so much more. All right, now a brief word from our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm excited to share that this podcast is brought to you by one of the strongest longtime supporters of the local startup ecosystem, that being Silicon Valley Bank, a division of First Citizens Bank. SVB serves innovative tech, healthcare, and life sciences companies, including 60% of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list, 72% of Forbes Cloud 100 list, and 48% of Forbes AI 50 list companies. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Damien. Damien, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Keith. It's good to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you because we're going to talk a lot about your company, Nebulock, which just announced a new round of funding. So there's a lot to discuss there. But before we get into that, I did notice you're building your company as a solo founder. And there's pros and cons with that. And I do hear from accelerators or VC firms, sometimes it's like, wow, geez, maybe it'd be better if there was a co-founder involved. So I wanted to, talk to you about that experience and, inspiration for other people that feel like it's the playbook to find a co-founder, but it's not always needed.
Yeah, I mean, spoken to a few people about this. I was out at Black Hat last week and talking with a few folks about the experience as a solo founder. Each person is different. Everyone's walk is different. For me, being a solo founder has been honestly quite rewarding, right? There's never a dull moment. You get to wear a bunch of different hats and say kind of the decision around it was in terms of the vision for Nebulock and also what I believe to be the urgency of the problem meant that to start, I was like, all right, I'm going to try this, see how it goes, right? And grow the team, and was grateful enough to get the support from investors and also resonance from customers that I was able to move forward as a solo founder. I don't think there's any right way or wrong way to do it, right? I think it's more a question of what works for you. And for me, for being a first-time solo founder, that was the right choice.
And I think that's the point that founders need to recognize. There's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
And lots of successful companies have had a solo founder. Lots have had 2 founders, many founders. So it's whatever's best for you. If you have a great idea with a compelling vision, a good story, a great product, and a market that's ripe for venture capital funding, you will get funded. So,
Yeah. No,
uh,
100%. 100%.
yeah, you gotta have those things. All right, well, let's rewind the clock. So, where did you grow up? What were you like as a child?
Yeah, so growing up, it's just interesting. I was a challenging child in elementary school.
Ah,
But
a lot of
you've
founders
got
probably
like
were.
I can only imagine. My parents are the real MVPs of this whole process, and my wife is a saint. But yeah, I'm the second of three boys, the third of four kids. I split my time between Germany and Northern California growing up. So I was born in Greenwich, Connecticut, moved to Germany at 3 months, was there through kindergarten, moved to the Bay Area in 1997. My dad was working in a small town called Palo Alto, right as the dot-com boom was happening, and saw a lot
So
of
he was in
change.
the tech industry.
He was an executive search consultant who specialized in CIO searches. Well,
Okay, okay.
it was interesting. Well, it's funny because his background, he's an aerospace engineer by education. So he did his undergrad and grad at MIT, but then went into aerospace law, program management in aerospace, and then went into executive search in the 80s and kind of did that until his, as a retirement, he's pseudo retired. He retired in 2009, but he's still got his own thing going on the side. So he now does startup recruiting, which has been really exciting to see as his son. And now, as we move from father to son to more friends, and peers, it's cool to kind of trade notes as two entrepreneurs in our own respective field. But, I then moved back to Germany in high school to play soccer. So I was a soccer player and got the opportunity to play for an academy team out there. So the way that teams in Germany work is you've got like a professional team, and then you've got kind of like baseball youth teams. So like single A, double A, triple A, and you like go up to the majors. I got a chance to move into that and play out in
Wow.
Germany for a few seasons. So really great. Uh, Played with some people who ended up making it to the big leagues. I had an interesting existential discussion around, do I go pro? There are some opportunities to do that, but I ultimately decided instead to go back to school, and was fortunate to get the opportunity to study at UCLA for my undergrad. So it all worked out. I do make the joke that like security is my second career, but it's been quite rewarding so far.
So when I saw, like, I guess now I can connect the dots in terms of how you have a professional soccer player on your list of investors. So
Mhm.
how do you look at playing at that level as a fundamental part of you being an entrepreneur? Playing at that elite soccer level.
It was super exciting to get a chance. So Mario Götze is his name, and like we can talk about it more when it comes to company building. But I very much do believe in terms of a lot of the lessons I learned in team sports. And I'm not saying that team sports are a requirement for founders or that people need to understand that experience or that analogy. But for me, the way that I think about company building does have to do a lot with a lot of the lessons learned there, right? Like it's not about the individual, it's about the unit. You're united towards a common goal. And like when it comes to high performing teams, you have different positions. You have different backgrounds and personalities. Like playing in Germany, I wasn't just playing with Germans. We had international folks who also moved to play as a part of this academy. And it's bringing together diverse perspectives, experiences, and, you know, in today's work culture, it's roles or skill sets. And on the soccer field, it was playing styles and experiences. But ultimately, like the two are very much the same, right? Like you want to build a successful business, a team oriented culture, right? In the same way, like with a sports team, right? Like you're all motivating each other to play as best as you can because like ultimately the goal is to win whatever league you're a part of. And like you go through ups and downs as a team, regardless of like if you're on the pitch or like if you're in the boardroom, right? So it is something that I do take to heart, and bringing Mario on board was a part of that. Was, God willing, we've got a large sales kickoff in a few years. I'd love for Mario to come in because his story is about like being on top of the world, winning the 2014 World Cup, scoring the winning goal for Germany, but then dealing with his own health challenges, a dip in form, and he's really made a great resurgence. Like he's a person who's really gone through some adversity and pressure, and now come out the other side and is someone I'm grateful to partner.
All right, so let's talk about getting your career started. So what did you do coming out of school?
In undergrad, I ended up studying for my focus at UCLA. I was a part of as part of our program, you have a senior thesis, right? And I was really interested and ended up studying adversarial game theory, right? And when I was thinking about, it was my junior year, kind of what big internship I wanted to have, I was looking at either being a quant or maybe taking this internship at a company called Northrop Grumman, which I thought might have been an insurance company, but it was a defense contractor. Um, it was one of those things that I was fortunate to be in the right place and right time. And pretty quickly, into my time at Northrop, I had a mentor who was like, you're studying, your job is to think about adversarial game theory, so asymmetric decision making. You've got the makings of like a phenomenal systems engineer. Like, let's bring you into our systems engineering program and specifically work on a competitive proposal program. But this was early 20 teens. No one understood cyber. And basically they were like, intern with a clearance, like, let's get you across like threat modeling and cyber operations, right? Because we're building this very large weapon system that had to interface with a bunch of different other systems. And the question was like, okay, it's going to take us a while to build this, but like, let's think about like network and cyber resiliency and hardening, right? So that was where I got my career started, was out at Northrop. And that was a lot of cyber ops, like software supply chain and physical supply chain security. And then ultimately threat hunting as a practice, right? How do you use like large amounts of data? How do you identify and wean out potential adversarial activity? And in an interesting way, ultimately trying to satisfy this question and requirement of how do you make this weapon system unhackable? Which is easier said than done, because you're trying to swap out systems from the 1960s that run on analog systems to something that is now, in the 2010s, far more sophisticated. All about nation state security.
All right. So after Northrop, what'd you do next?
Yeah. So, I was fortunate while I was at Northrop to get the opportunity to go back to school, and at the same time, so I'd work from like 6 to 5 Monday to Friday, and then I'd have class from like 6 to 9 Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and do homework on the weekends. Big part of that was, applying what I was learning in the classroom back to what I was doing at work and vice versa. And in 2016, I was taking a capstone course on cyber resiliency and designing like secure systems. And I was really focused on the endpoint. And it was right around the time that the DNC got hacked. And I love the team at Northrop. And don't get me wrong, spending 30 years on the same program would have been a potential way to live my life. It wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. But I saw that there was a team that responded to the DNC hack. And I thought to myself, like, it's really cool, right? Like, I never thought about the fact that free thought and democracy could be at risk with cyber, right? To me, it was much more about hardening systems. There's, an adversary on the other side, humans and machines attacking humans and machines. And there was this existential aspect of security that ultimately said, like, had me going, you know what? I'm going to join that company. I'll take whatever job they have, but I want to join that company. And I was fortunate to find that it was a relatively newly minted Series C 250-person threat intelligence company called CrowdStrike. So I joined, I left Northrop and joined CrowdStrike in, late 2016, early 2017. And got a chance to see what real growth was like, right? And I'd say, moving from an operator to vendor was an interesting transition, right? Like, I wasn't thinking about how to market products or scale products at Northrop. I was thinking about bad guys. But it was a phenomenal learning experience, seeing us grow, doing things like going from, teams and ARR to an IPO, and from moving desks 5 times in 3 years because we were growing so fast. It was an amazing experience. And I would say, like, CrowdStrike DNA and that experience has very much forged, I'd say, my approach to security, which is, lest we forget, there is always an adversary on the other side. And they are thoughtful and they are deliberate and they do plan. And they use tools to do that. And, in 2014, it was a particular set of tools. In 2025, they now have things like AI and Worm GPT to lower the barrier to entry. So instead of a couple of hundred organizations that can do this, it's N number, right? Like much remains to be seen in terms of the threat landscape. But we all feel, I would say, as if we're on the precipice of a new wave of cyber threats that we don't quite understand. But before I get into that, I guess, ended up working on moving from so at CrowdStrike, I started out doing like product and technical marketing because they were like, you're a technical person who can speak to people. And I have no concept of like bringing products to market, but learned a lot, got a chance to work on a few great products that we brought to market, like Falcon Complete, Spotlight, Discover, see what like platformization looked like. And then I got pulled pretty quickly into our solutions architecture team, which at CrowdStrike was all about integrations, engineering, and integrations development. So got a chance to work on the partnership that we had with Dell Technologies. So we were replacing Cylance and OEM and CrowdStrike agent. And at the time, Dell owned VMware. So it was this question of integrating with the SecureWorks managed service, like how we might be able to partner with VMware, and then also having a several hundred person company try and support millions of new Dell desktops, laptops, and servers, and enabling support and ensuring reliability of those integrations and enabling the sales team. And it was a really interesting engineering, but socio-technical problem of not just working with Dell as like a system, but also working with the sales and support system. And ended up doing that through our IPO, which was an incredible learning opportunity. I'm super grateful to do that.
And I think that experience, I would think, and we're going to talk about Palo Alto, where you've had this different roles like product marketing, solutions architecture, all like market facing, customer facing, so I think those are all things that help someone in different roles run a
Hmm.
company, and,
Yeah.
and obviously be in the position you are now. So I guess the next chapter of Palo Alto.
Yeah. So, I mean, and at CrowdStrike being an SA was interesting because you were both market and engineering facing, right? Like I was not just dedicated to customers. And really the next challenge I wanted was like, I wanted to understand two things. And the opportunity came up rather fortuitously, like a coffee chat with a Palo Alto Networks employee turned into like an on-site interview 2 days later, which turned into a job offer. And really what I wanted to explore was two things. Like I understood endpoint, what I wanted to really get a feel for was how do you deliver security products at scale, and what are the problems that enterprises are really dealing with? Um, and as luck would have it, I got a chance to work the enterprise territory in Australia for Palo Alto Networks. So moved from San Francisco to Sydney, Australia, which was super exciting and a really, really amazing opportunity. And then, worked with large oil and gas and financial services institutions while I was out there. And when you're talking to a CISO about a rollout of container security, firewall, and endpoints over 500,000 hosts, like that's a real project. And also getting plugged into the channel and seeing what like channel distribution and specific partnerships can offer and what that better together story was. I really wanted the chance of like learning a new industry, but also challenging myself in a new geography. And thankfully, it went quite well. My account manager and I were quite successful, which was great. But it was also a phenomenal learning experience, and the team out in Sydney is really incredible. I actually still have my farewell card from them up on my wall over my screens as a reminder, just because it's full of a lot of positivity. And all days are interesting as a founder, most are great, but it does keep you going from time to time, which is good.
So why'd you decide to go back to school after that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was 2020, and I was thinking about the impact that I wanted to have on the world. And this was where like deep learning, natural language processing, like it was really starting to bubble up into the zeitgeist. It wasn't just a proof of concept, but it was real. And I knew I wanted to start a company, but I thought it behooved me before trying to explore that to take some time off to do some research, get plugged in and understand like, hey, not just what's state of the art in the industry, but like, where's research going? Like, what are we doing that's different? And I took a bet on myself, and I said, I'm going to apply to one school. And wouldn't you know, they said yes. So I was fortunate to get admitted into MIT. And as part of the program there's with a master's in engineering, the course there, like you're studying in the School of Engineering, but it's also a split program between that and Sloan. So you get to take some business school classes. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I ended up writing my thesis out of our computer science AI lab. I had a chance to do some part-time work with some venture capital firms. I also worked part-time at who I'd eventually join after school, which was Arctic Wolf. Spent a summer at MIT Lincoln Labs. It was a great learning opportunity to really dig into research. I ended up like running a club with a friend of mine around defense tech and defense tech investing. It was a phenomenal experience. But the real reason was I knew at some point I want to start something. I wanted to take some time and understand, like, not just, hey, what exists today, but like, where's the puck going? Because a lot of times, and this timeline may be accelerated in today's AI age, but there's a few years between like what's in research and what's in product. So what that process was, and take the time to really be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, like what I saw when I was reviewing your background and what I'm learning is
Mhm,
your decisions were very methodical of what you are ultimately looking to do, which is now.
mhm,
Because then the next chapter, so you've kind of have this pie chart of your experience, all the different roles
mhm.
you've had. Now we're going to do product management, right? So it's like you wore all these different hats. So what was your role at Arctic Wolf?
Yeah. And I mean, you're correct, right? Each decision was, at the time, just a path towards learning as much as I could, and trying to understand as much as I could. Um, Within security, and specifically for me, it was around the practice of threat hunting and security operations. So, as director of product for Arctic Wolf Labs, my job was to run the product organizations across our AI, threat intelligence, detections engineering, security research, and OEM businesses. So the idea was building all telemetry and detection sources that ultimately get delivered to Arctic Wolf's 1,000-person security operations center, right? They're a large managed detection and response firm. They've got a 24/7 service. How do you deliver both efficiencies to those people, right? How do you automate and identify ways that you can automate specific elements of security operations? But how do you also improve efficacy, right? How do we detect more bad things? How do we make things more human readable and explainable? How joining Arctic Wolf in 2022, AI is just coming onto the scene. How do you implement AI and how do you do that at scale, right? Because their scale is huge, right? They're consuming trillions of events a week and they've got thousands of people working on this problem. So that was my remit. And I'm proud to say we delivered some pretty amazing capabilities to our security operations team, worked with a lot of really smart people while I was there.
I hope you are enjoying this interview. Just a brief word from our sponsor. As a longtime champion in the local startup ecosystem, Silicon Valley Bank supports innovative companies with the solutions and financing they need through every stage of growth. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com.
Ultimately, in May of last year, I kind of got to a point where I was like, we do some great work. I think it's time for another challenge. Um, and I want to take some time to think about what that next challenge is. So I resigned, and in the back of my mind, I was like, I think I got this idea. Let's see. And ultimately started Nebulock not long after I left Arctic Wolf. And the idea was like, okay, I have I've taken some time off. I have a thesis. Like, this is something that is the summation of my experience and the pain that I've seen. Can this actually become a viable business? And in terms of Nebulock, right, like as an operator, as someone who worked across building products, marketing products, selling products, integrating products, a, a problem that continued to plague the people I worked with and bothered me over a decade ago remained the same today, which is how do you tackle the false negatives and or proactivity problem in security. How do you, because we as an industry understand, like, we're not going to detect everything. That's why SIMs exist. That's why every security vendor has a SaaS platform where they do telemetry logging, right? How do you identify potential gaps in your infrastructure? How do you fill them? And how do you do that at scale? Because threat hunting, as it stands, is a super manual process. It's a bunch of different tools. It's data normalization. It's really brilliant women and men trying to make hay of a bunch of disparate data sources. And the whole time, like, they're testing hypotheses that are single threaded, right? It's my idea, right? I read this threat intelligence report. Am I gonna find this thing? If I do, great. What do I do? If I don't, was that valuable? Uh, and despite all the amazing capabilities, I realized that, like, an AI native approach to threat hunting, automating threat hunting workflows, normalizing data, giving people the ability to close the loop from hypothesis test or threat intelligence report to tested and validated detection in their detections pipeline, expanding that coverage proactively, autonomously, like, that was where we needed to go. So say, like, that sounds great, right? Like, I'm biased. I thought it was an exciting idea, but actually what I did was I interviewed 90 customers in 90 days with
Hmm.
some good old fashioned discovery to say, like, does this make sense, right? Like, of course,
Right.
I think this is a good idea, but, like, it's not just up to me. And this, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Mom Test, but I would highly recommend it. But that was the purpose of the exercise. So it's all about product discovery and understanding, how do you define proactivity? Is threat hunting commensurate with proactivity? Like, is that a value proposition? Have you spent money on this before? If somebody built something that could improve your detection coverage, would you buy it? Like, where visibility gaps are. And what that helped me paint a picture of was, A, there was a market, B, kind of what the roadmap for that needed to be, and where to focus on first in terms of expanding visibility and giving that autonomy back to our customers, and then ultimately, executing on that roadmap. And that has been Nebulock's story since its inception.
Well, if people aren't familiar with the term threat hunting, like what is it in like a
Yes.
simple form?
Uh, that's a great question. Because I think you asked 8 people what threat hunting means, and I'll give you 10 different answers. Threat hunting at its core is the principle and practices of exposing more visibility into your security data, or more simply put, with less jargon. Threat hunting is identifying the known unknowns or unknown unknowns hiding in your security data. And that's by asking questions of your information. Now, people can do that in a variety of ways. It could be me back in the day running SQL queries. People still run SQL queries, or it can be Splunk queries. And typically, people aggregate data into a data lake. And the threat hunter's job is to form a hypothesis or have an idea about a potential threat and go hunt for it in that data. So that's the moniker threat hunter and threat hunting.
How do you know what to look for?
Yeah. So how do you know what to look for? That's the real question, right? So different schools of thought. Either, so typically this goes one of two ways. There's a threat intelligence report. So you get a report that says bad guys are targeting banking and financial service institutions on the East Coast, and they're using a Windows system internal tool, PS exec, to do so. Okay, great. I'm going to look at all PS exec activity in my environment. Well, that's a real tough thing because that runs on all Windows all Windows operating systems, right? So the next step, and this is where the threat hunting and the creativity comes in, is what are the behaviors that I need to look for? Because typically attackers will masquerade as a legitimate user inside your network. But at some point, that program is going to do something that you didn't expect it to do. It's going to behave oddly, or someone will log in after hours, or they'll use a proxy and their original location seems to be somewhere overseas, not in Boston, Massachusetts. And that really is up to the threat hunter to divine this hypothesis, test that hypothesis, and ultimately, if they find something, translate that into a report, an incident response plan because there's an active breach, or turn around into a detection, right? Because I've hunted for something, I found something, and I don't want it to happen again in my environment.
So what you're building sounds like the perfect use case for AI, right? Like this sounds like it's a manual process that should really be automated. And um, like I've talked to different companies, and a recent podcast was with Radical AI, and they're using AI to disrupt the whole scientific discovery method. And it's an autonomous lab that's doing all these AI experiments for material sciences.
Mm,
So it's just like a perfect use case, and it's like creating this. I mean, this company, if successful, will be a massive industry defining type of company, which is amazing. So it sounds like, there's all these different use cases of this, what you're working on could do it so much faster, quicker, and have more intelligence, hopefully feeding it of what to look for and get to the root cause so much faster.
yeah. And I'd say much like Radical AI, Nebulock aspires to be a category defining company. And I don't think I'm unique in any founder aspiring to do that. I would just say I think that the need is there in terms of threat hunting, right? And the autonomy that we can deliver. But I'll also say like we're being really pragmatic about how and where to use AI versus tried and true machine learning and heuristics methods, right? Because agents are really good at orchestrating workflows. They're not the best at math, right? So being thoughtful about how and where to do that, and also capturing feedback and doing fine tuning from our customers in terms of what we're doing and the outputs of that allows us to build not just an agent, but systems of agents that can operate intelligently, better, faster, and more autonomously over time. Right? That is exactly how we're thinking about this. As an aside, my best friend is a material scientist, so duly noted that what Radical AI does is it really resonates. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant idea. So, all right, so how are you approaching this problem then? Like where do things exist with the platform? Are you just in like build mode? Is it something that's you've got some, initial test customers? So I guess where does things stand with your company?
Yeah. So we are in production at several companies, which is really exciting. A few of the folks were generous enough to contribute quotes to our website. We're working with many companies, which is exciting. I'd say we got a version 1 of the product. We are obviously continuing to build out the platform's functions, right? Like this fundraise was all about giving us the capital to expand our team, to focus on delivering and building out our platform functionality. So what's really exciting as a founder is like it works. We're finding things, which is great. People are seeing value and improving workflow times and team efficiency and efficacy, which is great. I'd also say like we're just getting started, right? Like the agents are great. They're getting even better. And we're all learning in this world of AI, right? Like GPT-5 dropped last week, and we're looking at that and how and where we can implement new frontier models into our architecture, and what do we in-source and fine tune. So it's an exciting time, but that's where we're at. So in production, delivering value. Obviously, looking for other great partners, right? So if there are folks who are thinking about gaps in visibility, or they want to improve and harden their detection engineering and threat hunting practices, like that's kind of our sweet spot in terms of where we're seeing a lot of the value and adoption for the Nebulock platform.
And is what you're doing different than maybe what other cybersecurity companies claim or are offering? Is it that you're AI native and this is kind of like, you've built this from the ground up thinking about this path versus trying to, reposition the platform to do what you're doing?
The short answer is yes. Um, I can go into more detail, but I think it really is a question of we're fortunate to build at the time that we chose to build. I think a lot of people have talked about autonomous threat hunting, but we're building in like 15 years ago, and they've got some basic automations or heuristics and very fast people on the back end, and they do great work. But in my opinion, putting an LLM on top of 15-year-old infrastructure is not an AI native company. Um, AI native is more a consequence of the time. So I'd say that's the first component. And the second is how we're building it. So not just throwing agents at the problem, but also translating the threat hunters who we have on staff, their thought process, their workflows into our agents so that it's not just workflow automation, but they behave like people. They behave like the process they're trying to automate, because ultimately our goal is not to replace humans, but to augment them, right? To fill a gap in existing organizations that struggle today, right? Or for companies that have threat hunters, awesome. Like, now you don't have to do all the frustrating data engineering and process normalization with a prompt. You can orchestrate and run the same workflows you would that normally take, a week, 2 weeks, a month to do. So you can do more, which is great.
All right, so you announced an $8.5 million round of funding led by Bain Capital Ventures and a bunch of other amazing VCs and angel investors. When I look at your background and your story, I'm just curious as to what the reception was for, first time founder raising capital. Sometimes that can be a tough, situation to raise capital or just a long road to finally get there. But when I hear your story that you've been working in this industry, since you graduated, you saw this problem years and years and years ago, and you built a career in different roles in different cybersecurity companies. Like it just seemed like you were meant to do what you're building. And the VCs probably like, what did you think they saw in you and your idea that they were like, yes, we want to be a part of this?
Um, well, I'm really grateful that people saw something in me in the first place, and that I'd say is a testament to the amazing investors that have come along. Um, So I think I'll quote one of my investors, Will Lehman, who, we've got a great relationship, and a lot of my friends call me Damo. You know, he likes to say, like, Damo is purpose built for this company, right? And I think a lot of people saw that. They saw the breadth of experience, the hunger, the passion, and, like, truly, I mean it when I say, Keith, like, the world doesn't need another security company. Like, there are thousands of us, and we're all trying to build better mousetraps. I think what really resonated, and this is my firm belief, is like, I want to build a company that actually delivers value to my customers, right? That solves a pervasive first order problem by being pragmatic and thinking about pervasive challenges as it pertains to proactivity. And we've tried to solve that with humans and the principle of threat hunting. But how do you use AI and humans to streamline that process and actually give people proactivity at scale for the fraction of a cost of hiring an entire team to do so? Right. That's really the vision. And I think that's what a lot of people saw, as I was beginning the investment journey. And I was fortunate that people partnered with me when there was I think calling it a pitch deck would be generous. I wrote a 30-page manifesto on why Nebulock needs to exist. Then, translated that into a few slides, and ultimately that led to the first check-in, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. All right, so what's the plan moving forward? Like growing the team and like,
Execution, product market fit. Like, that's exactly what it is. Really focusing on, I think our path is very clear. Our existing, the folks that already are working with us in production and the folks that we're bringing online, like, the value proposition to them is very clear. They provided great feedback in terms of our direction. I think I mentioned 90 customers in 90 days. I continue to do discovery. So in May and June, I did 15 demos in 15 days to 15 net new companies. So continuing to get new feedback as we grow. The whole point is, like, grow the team, grow the platform, execute on our vision, and deliver a platform that is valuable. And then, kind of take it from there. But that's the focus. That's what we're using the money for.
and I've been interested to see how these native AI companies they raise, and it's been interesting to see how they've been growing the team. It's not like what it used to be when I saw, years ago when they would raise their $8 million A round. I was like, okay, this is go time. We're going to hire, 20 engineers and some, product managers, user experience, and then
Mhm.
maybe get the first salesperson in place. So like the capital, what are you building as far as the core team now? Or what exists now and what are you hiring? What areas?
Yeah. So right now we've got an amazing team of engineers. So you can check us out on LinkedIn. But as it stands today, we're 12 FTEs. continuing to look to hire a few really smart, capable, amazing engineers. Yeah, I'm also thinking on the go-to-market side, really looking to bring in like a head of demand gen is the other aspect, right? Like pipeline is good, always looking for more pipeline, looking for more partners. And then I think it's going to be founder-led sales until I can't handle the inbound, and we'll bring in some great salespeople in the not too distant future. So it's a great problem to have, but really it's building out the engineering team and ensuring that we've got the team to continue to build and maintain and improve the resilient systems that we have already in place.
Well, again, like you're set for like you set your career up for founder-led sales to a T.
Hmm.
Like you had all the
Yeah.
different roles, and it's like 15 demos in 15 days. You're getting feedback. You're talking to the engineers and like making the platform more of what it needs to be based on customer feedback. So, very interesting. All right, in the short duration that you've been building Nebulock, like what have
Hmm.
been some of these initial lessons learned?
Three key lessons learned. The first is, as a founder, think about your value system before you build your team. So when it was just me, a friend of mine told me, write down your corporate values before you hire, because it's important to think about, values and how that flows down into the organization. So I did. When it was just me, I wrote out our core values. So um, low ego, no BS, empathy for the customer, learning and accountability, respecting candor, and hustle. And like that is the culture that we're building here, because like you're not just bringing people on board, it's very much like a culture that you build. So, and culture is lived. So I'd say like that was the big first lesson I learned, because I didn't know that I needed to think about values before I did. Um, the second is how far and how fast you can go with AI. So like AI assisted development, you can get some real efficiencies on the engineering side. I don't think that's anything new. I think the new thing is, but don't vibe codes your way into prod, right? Like hire people who understand the stack. Our team, I'm very grateful for, but like it's a lot of brilliant folks who have deep technical expertise in building product and AI systems, so that we're not just like vibe coding production systems, right? But we're being really diligent around design. And the third is like, as a first time founder, I assumed that the product had to be perfect from the get go. And the reality is, as an early stage company, like it's not going to be. What you are expected to be is responsive. So for me, it really was the idea of, finding early stage partners, qualifying rigorously, and then understanding like how that feedback applies into your product development and being responsive around that and being receptive to it. Because like, Nebulock is something I'm so incredibly proud of, but there's always going to be learning opportunities for how we can improve what we're doing. The same way that, like, as a leader, right? I've learned a lot of lessons in the 15 months at the helm of this company. And you know what? In 15 months, I'll probably go back to me today and be like, gosh, so many things that I was going to learn, so many new things to understand. But, just coming out of the gate, it's build a good value system and, find efficiencies, but like ensure that talent density is high. And then ultimately, don't make perfect be the enemy of good, and understand that this is a learning, iterative growth opportunity.
All right, so what are three apps you can't live without? It can't be Slack, email, or your calendar.
Can't be Slack, email, or calendar. All right, Signal. Secure messaging. I'm a security guy. I got to do it.
Right.
Garmin Connect. I'm a runner. I run 1,000 miles a year. It's something I've been doing for several years now.
What was the name of the
In
app? Garmin Connect?
Garmin Connect. So I have a Garmin.
Garmin, got it.
Yeah.
Garmin, the watch, yes.
So Signal, Garmin. And then, I'm really tempted to say, I'd love to say like ChatGPT and OpenAI. I'll be a contrarian. And I will go with Substack. Substack for me is the best way to get news from practitioners that's, not too cluttered. You can curate your feed. And also as a content creator, it's what I love to interact with the most. So keeping this less corporate and more personal, like Signal, I'm on Signal. I'm typically texting and messaging on Signal. I think as a founder, like exercising, taking the space that I need to ensure that I can show up for my wife, show up for my friends, show up for my employees. And then finally, you know, hearing hearing what's being said on the market without needing to buy a Gartner report. And I think the best way to do that is on Substack. So those are my three apps.
All right. Well, I usually ask, podcast or book recommendation. You mentioned something earlier that I would love to hear more about.
Oh, the mom test?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I do have a podcast recommendation. Um, so yeah, the mom test. So the mom test is all about product discovery, right? So the idea is, you know, you can, if you're talking to your mom about something, right? Like, ideally, they should be able to understand what you're talking about. A and B, like your mom is typically going to be very supportive of whatever you do. So when it comes to product discovery, don't ask for people's approval around the idea you have because people are going to tell you as the founder what you want to hear, right? Instead, talk to them about the problems that they're dealing with and the pain points around them, and then focus on education and additional lines of questioning to understand the willingness to pay, the real pain point, and how what you're doing might solve that problem.
That's so true because people will tell, like, most people are pretty nice and they're gonna like not want to give you negative feedback or criticism. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, another podcast guest of mine is the managing director at Harvard Innovation Labs, Becca. And
Mm,
she said a lot of founders are now using ChatGPT for the mom test, just like explain to me in mom test terms, like how this
mm-hmm.
should operate, so you can have a conversation back and forth. Obviously, you want to use real world people, but that can help at least frame out some thoughts. And I thought that was an interesting use of ChatGPT, which is endless, the use cases. But anyways, and what was the podcast that you recommend?
Risky business. So if folks are curious about cyber, want to understand like beyond the market, but deep into the technical details, Patrick Gray and Adam Wallow at Risky Biz. It's on Spotify and a bunch of different podcast forums. And they've got a few different Risky Business Media as the parent company. They've got a few different daily and weekly segments. I cannot recommend it enough. Just a great form of media, great podcast. Really, really enjoy it. Been listening for a decade. So yeah,
Wow.
couldn't recommend it.
All right. Outside of work, what do you like to do? Running's one of them.
Running is one of them. Yeah. So I run 1,000 miles a year. I try and stay as physically active as possible. Uh, and then honestly, it's like spending time with friends, spending time with my wife. I guess like a unique thing about us, we really like to play the game Gin Rummy. So that's like a daily activity. So yeah, I'd say like running, training, quality time with friends and family, and then yeah, some gin rummy, which is a good time.
That's I love that. That's going back, old school. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
yeah.
Uh, Very cool. Damien, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your background story, obviously, what you and your team are up to with Nebulock, and
Mhm.
obviously all the great advice.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you so much for having me, Q.